Hey guys, so one of the most common questions I hear at seminars is people asking, should they use strength in jiu-jitsu, or how much strength should they be using? It's kind of a complicated question because the reality is you do need to use strength sometimes, but also you don't want to use too much because it doesn't scale well when you fight stronger opponents. So this video I'm going to talk a lot about the pros and cons of when you should be using strength and when you should be focusing on technique. So up front, the problem with using all strength is that it won't scale well versus larger opponents. A lot of people will be training at a gym and they're one of the bigger guys in class or one of the stronger guys, and then when they end up competing, they have to fight another guy who's bigger or stronger. There's always someone bigger and stronger than you, and especially if you're not on performance enhancers and you go compete, there unfortunately is quite a few people on performance enhancers. So if you're developing a game that's based around the idea that you're stronger than your opponent, then you're not going to be able, eventually the techniques that you're using on the smaller guys in the gym are not going to work well when you compete. Another issue with using too much strength is that it's really taxing and tiring. You have to imagine that when you're fighting, you may end up in a full 10-minute match, or if you're doing sub only, it may be even longer. So when you're doing things that you can get away with that only last for like a minute or two, or like in a short moment in a round in the gym, that's okay. But when you're competing at a high level, you have to go 10 minutes. So these things that don't seem like a big deal when you can take rests between rounds, when you have adrenaline in tournament, will end up sapping all of your energy and make you gas out. On the other end of that, one of the most common mistakes I hear people say is that you shouldn't use strength, or you need to be very analytical, and that certainly is true. You need to be analytical, but there's also a negative or dark side to being analytical, and this is probably more of an issue for a lot of people than the overuse of strength, is that people overanalyze. And of course I'm very analytical when I do jiu-jitsu, but what I mean by overanalyze is people, while they're rolling, they're trying to understand everything, they're trying to analyze everything. A lot of the time for analyzing is after the match. I reflect after the match. The problem with analyzing during a match, it's like trying to jump in slow motion, right? For these techniques to work, they have to be done at 100% full speed. If I go for an arm bar on someone really slow motion, they have time to move their arm and defend, right? So you're only going to be able to make these things work when you do them at full force. The problem is that when you're in the process of developing and learning, you probably don't know how to do it correctly yet. So that means you're often going to have to do it full force the incorrect way. But doing it full force the incorrect way isn't necessarily bad. Of course, that's not how you want to do it in the long run, but it's part of the discovery process of figuring out what works and what doesn't. The more you do it the wrong way, your body will like kind of subconsciously teach you that that's not working, and you're going to start finding new solutions. So the reality is, to mix this is you want to go to class, learn technique, watch competition video, watch YouTube, and learn a lot of technique and get a lot of input of data into your head. And then when you roll, a lot of these things will subconsciously influence the decisions you will make. So if you're in your head while you're rolling and you're thinking like, okay, what should I do to, as soon as you're thinking, you're stifled and you're not going to be able to act. So you just need to act. And you change your subconscious actions by watching a lot of content, studying a lot, reflecting after your rolls. After you roll, or like at the end of class, you want to take time to sit with notes, or at least think about it and think about the things that went well, the things that went bad. A lot of these things will change your subconscious so that the next time you roll, you're able to take action immediately without thinking. One of the other major ways to change your subconscious patterns so you don't have to think when you roll is using specific sparring. So let's say that there's a specific situation, like you're trying to finish the triangle choke and the guy turns his head a certain way. If you wait in a regular match for that moment to appear, it may not appear in the context of an entire match. However, if you start the match, or you do a specific training where you start with the triangle choke on your opponent, you're kind of primed to be in that exact position so that you can have a high likelihood of encountering the situation that you're doing, and whatever you were reflecting on or thinking about before the roll is kind of primed in your head so that you can act at full speed and hopefully make the right choice at the right time, right? So I hope you guys understand what I'm saying is that you want to find the right balance here, right? You ultimately, you want to do everything full force with full strength, with correct technique, right? And again, strength, when we use the word strength, like you use strength to do anything. If you do a push-up, you use strength. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to use strength in scale to someone else. So like if I'm doing arm wrestling, that's strength versus strength, right? But if I'm pulling myself up off the ground, off of their sleeves, I'm actually pulling my own body weight. And that actually scales. So if you're doing something that's moving yourself or using strength, but it's not strength versus strength, that's okay as long as you understand where you're doing it. But if you're doing something that is not going to work in strength versus strength versus someone much stronger than you, then that is a bad technique that you don't want to develop on.